All right, welcome back everyone to Manny School of Art. Thank you for joining me again as we continue our series on one point perspective. Now with that, we have all our angular forms out of the way. We're going to take a look at the circle and all of the things that you can make with a circle. All right, to draw a circle on a front plane like this right here is actually pretty straightforward. All you have to do, since this is not in perspective, is figure out what size circle you want and either use a template or use a compass and draw your circle. That's pretty straightforward. But what happens when you have to draw that circle going into the distance? As you can see here, as I lift this, the circle becomes more of an ellipse. But it's not a regular ellipse. It's actually an irregular ellipse. So depending on how I change it, like this, you can see that this part here starts to look smaller, but this part here stays the same. And the more that I twist it, the smaller the depth becomes. Same thing would happen if I was doing it in this direction, right? In this case, the height stays the same, but the depth changes to the point where it can actually look almost like a line. So that's why drawing circles in perspective is so tricky, is because there's so many changes to it, and it's not a true ellipse. The ellipse changes depending on the angle, because the back of the square is going to keep getting smaller and smaller, and in some cases the square is going to look more like a rectangle. So what we want to do today is we want to focus on that, and I want to show you how to draw circles in perspective, and then also how to take those circles and make new forms out of them. All right, so before we begin drawing our circle in perspective, there's a few properties of a circle that you want to know, some simple ones. Number one, a circle is always going to fit inside of a perfect square. So when we are drawing a circle in perspective, we have to make sure that it looks like a square in perspective. Number two, the circle is going to touch the walls on all four sides. So I like to think of this as the 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. If you can find those 4 points when your square is in perspective, it's going to actually help you make your ellipse look correct. And then the third one is if you need 8 points right here where the circle crosses the diagonal line, it's just a little over 2/3 from center here, and I'll show you how to find that point. So when you're drawing a circle, it's not only going to touch at these 4 places here, but it's also going to touch at these additional 4 places. So let's start by drawing a circle in perspective, and we'll start off fairly easy. We're going to just use the 4 points. So the steps that you're going to need to follow is as follows. First, you're going to draw your square in perspective. Then you're going to crisscross the corners to find the center. Then you're going to locate 12, 3, 6, and 9. And then we're going to try to draw the ellipse. Okay. So let me show you what that looks like. And this will work whether the circle is on a vertical format or whether it's laying on the ground or up above. The process is exactly the same. All right. Let me go ahead and walk you through these 4 little steps right here. Show you how we can do a circle that is in perspective. And we're going to do this one on a vertical format. So I'm going to draw a line, vertical format. Remember, the first step is to draw the box. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to do a little one. We'll do a 2-inch one right here. Okay. Take those to the vanishing point. Lightly, because you know you're going to have to do some erasing. So this is just a review from last week. Now we need to figure out where to cut off the back. So remember, think of this as your 0 line. Since this is 2 inches up, we want to go 2 inches across right here. And then we're going to transfer that point to that converging line right there. Okay. So right here would be the back of this box or the square. Now you can see already that this does not look like a square. It looks more like a rectangle. That's because In this case, if you remember from earlier, we're drawing the circle like this. So it's going to look really tall this way, but shallow this way. Okay? Step 2, we got to find the center. The way we find the center is simply by crisscrossing the corners, just like we did last week. Crisscross. Okay. Now we have to find 12, 3, 6, and 9. To find 3 and 9, here's the center. Just line that up to the vanishing point. So there's 3 o'clock on this side, 9 o'clock on this side. And to find 12 and 6, you simply come down from the center point, up and down from the center point. So there's 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Those are the 4 points that this circle would have to hit in order to look like it's in perspective, okay? And this is the tricky part. You cannot have a straight line anywhere on a circle or an ellipse. So you have to kind of like give it a good feel, and it should look like an ellipse. But make sure that you don't have any points, right? That's another mistake that I see a lot of times, is the students will leave a point on the ellipse and it doesn't look right. It looks like a football, okay? So it is tricky. Okay. So this would be a reasonable circle in perspective if it was on a vertical format. Now let's try one over here, and let's do it on the ground. So that is laying down horizontally. Regardless of which direction you do it, the process is exactly the same. So let's say that I want to do it, let's put it right here. So we'll draw the line. Let's measure this one. We'll keep this one at 2 also, so you can have a little bit of consistency. Take those to the vanishing point. Okay. Now, because this one is on the ground plane, we can actually use our 45 to figure out our diagonal. So you simply line up your 45 to this point here on the left. Draw your line. And right where those two meet, that is where the back of this box would be, or the square. So simply take it across, and there you go. And then if you connect this one to this one, same as this, right? Except that now it's on the ground. Here's your center. So line that up to the vanishing point. And find, in this case, this will be 12 o'clock. And this will be 6 o'clock. And then simply come across. And here is 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Okay. So here we have our 4 points. And we are going to try to draw this oval so that it looks good. Now, normally, if I was doing this, I would actually take it off, take the tape off, because it's a lot easier to spin the paper and get these curves to look good. But since I have a camera, I don't want to do that. So it is tricky. Remember, everything has to curve. No points and no straight lines. So, and you got to stay within the box. So you saw on the back there where I kind of went outside of the box a little bit. So this would be a reasonable circle in perspective on the ground. Now I'm going to show you how to find this point right here that falls on the diagonal, right? So diagonal curve, that's where they meet. And once you find this one point, you can simply transfer it to all four of the diagonals. So there's a little bit more involved. So let's start. It starts off exactly the same way as doing 4 points. Okay, so let me show you how to find this point right here where the circle meets the diagonal. It's a little tricky. So we know that this was 1.5 inches here. So we need to go 1.5 inches here, right? Then we need to take this box right here and find the center of that one and move it, in this case, to the left. And we simply crisscross and move it to the left. Then you got to take this right here, line it up to this point that you found, just like so. And where this line meets the diagonal, that is the point where the circle is going to intercept, okay? So it's a little tricky. So first thing that I want to do is, here's this box that's on the left. So crisscross and find the center of that box right there. There's the center of this little square right here. We got to move it to the left. So line this up. Okay, so this point and this point are the same. Now we need to figure out where this is. Since this is in perspective, we're not going to measure. So what we have to do is we have to go line this up to this here, and where it touches here, that will be that point. So line up the top of the square to that center right there, and mark it. Okay. So what we did here is exactly this right here. Okay. So from the top to the center right, and where they intersect here on the bottom, that's this point. And then take that to here, right, to that other point that we found, and mark your diagonal. It's right there. Okay. Now simply move that to the other 3 diagonals. So I take my square, move that dot to this diagonal, and then use my vanishing points, move the dots to this diagonal, and move this one to this diagonal. Okay. So now I have 8 points. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I can start to draw my circle, making sure that well, it's an ellipse now, but making sure that the ellipse hits all 8 of those, and also making sure that it's staying within the square that's in perspective. So because of this angle that I drew, you could see this ellipse here is very irregular, which is why you can't use those store-bought ones, right? Because they tend not to fit into the squares that are in perspective. So that's what it would look like. Now let's draw one laying flat so you can see. And you have to get used to these extra steps. They're not the easiest to come by. So since it's going to be flat, first I'm going to draw my horizontal line. Decide how wide that's going to be. So let's stay with 3. 1, 2, 3. Take those to the vanishing points. Oops, missed that one. It's kind of important when you're doing this that you're accurate, because if you're off, if you start making like little mistakes like that, it's going to throw everything else off. Now take this to the 45 here. Right there. Come across. Or take it to the other 45, whichever one you prefer. And then find the center. Boom. Okay. Again, always find the center. Then you transfer from there. So let's find 12 and 6. So there's 12, 6, 3, and 9. 3, 9. Now we need to find these additional points. Since this one is horizontal, we can go that way or that way. Doesn't matter, since I have plenty of space over here. We said that this is 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to add 3 more on this side. 1, 2, and 3. Mark it. Okay. Take that. Find the center of that one. Okay. Remember, you're always finding the center of the box that's opposite of this. So if I would have measured this way, then I would have had to find the center of that one. Okay. Move this center line to the left. Always opposite of that. So I'm moving it to the left. And then take that, line them up, mark the diagonal. Right there. Okay. And then just move it around. So I'm going to move it this way first this time. And then move it to the back by using the vanishing points. So there's our other 4 points. And now it's just a matter of drawing the curve, which is always the tricky part because it's got to feel right. There's no easy way of doing this. You just got to make sure that it's curving, that there's no flat areas, that there's no points. And again, if I was doing this without the camera, I would actually take the tape off, and because it's easier to draw a circle when you can move the paper around. But there we go. So you saw like there it was getting too close to that back of the box too soon. So that's what this one would look like if it was kind of like this, right? Where this one is more like this. Okay. There you go. There we have it. That's a comprehensive look as to how circles are drawn in 1-point perspective using either 4 points or 8 points. the big thing, the big takeaway is make sure that when you are doing these, that you are following the steps. Remember that the first step is always to make sure that you draw your square in perspective. It has to be a square. So use your measuring points if you need to. Second, you have to find the center of that square. So and you do that by crisscrossing. Then you find your 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock points. And then you can either draw the ellipse or you can use those points to find the other 4 points. It really depends on how comfortable you are with this process. I find that after you practice a little while that you can get away with doing 4 points very easily. But if you struggle at first, trying to make a good looking ellipse, then use the 8-point system. In the next video, we're going to be taking a look at the different forms that come from the circle. Cylinders, arches, cones, etc. And we'll be looking at how to do them in 1-point perspective and also how to combine them with other forms. So I hope you tune in for that. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.